You ever notice how some of the best players in Valorant don't have calm aim? Everyone tells you to slow down, focus on smooth crosshair placement, and only shoot when you're on target. But then you see pros like Demon1, Kangkang, and Flor just insta-flicking and hitting the shot. So what if calm aim isn't actually the best way to aim? The videos out there right now basically says that calm aim is the best way to aim because it helps with consistency. And I think this is true. Calm aim basically emphasizes micro adjustments, tracking, and hit confirmation, which all help with consistency. Let's break that down so we can actually understand why it helps with your consistency. So one of the requirements to have calm aim is to have really good crosshair placement. That means that you have to actually predict where your next fight is going to be. By anticipating your next duel, you're going to be a lot more ready and playing in a way that will actually help you convert that duel. And if your pre-aim is slightly off, or if the target is moving, then that's where micro adjustments will come into play, which is basically just a smooth and small adjustment on your crosshair, which is very different from a very harsh flick that typically is higher tension and might cause you to overflick or underflick. And on top of that, if you train your tracking, you will also improve your movement reading, which will allow you to actually understand how to aim at that target. That all makes sense, right? I mean, that's what I thought. But then the more I would watch Valorant pro matches and pro players, I realized that that wasn't actually the case. Demon1 was one of the first examples that I saw where pretty much he would brute force his aim and just rely on speed and just hit his shot first. And then recently with the champs winners of EDG, Kangkang is also an insta-flicker. And then I also look at Chichu, who has been dominating, and he's also an insta-flicker. And at first I was like, okay, maybe that's just something that all low sense players do. Because Demon1 was 1600 DPI 0.1 in-game, and Kangkang and Chichu are all around that sensitivity. But then I started looking at other players like Fluorescent, Zekken, and Knights, and they play on like medium sensitivity, which I believe they're all on 1600 DPI 0.175. And these players frequently insta-flick as well, just with a slight variation, which I'll get into in a second. But first, I want to talk about why this might actually make sense in a game like Valorant. Basically, speed might be more important than precision. And hear me out. If you flick first and hit a headshot, then you win. And if you flick first and hit a body shot, then you slow down the enemy. But even in the worst case scenario, if you flick first and then miss, it's actually not that big of a deal. Because in a game like Valorant, all you have to do is reset the fight by just strafing to the side, letting your gun accuracy reset, and then shooting again. Or, for some players with really good spray control, even if they missed the first shot, the second shot, or the third shot, they might be able to control their spray and hit one of those shots in the head. And to show this, I have a clip of Forsaken playing Hardbots from back in 2022. Pay attention to how he'll just insta-flick and just immediately shoot. And even if he misses the first couple of shots, he just has to spray control and eventually one of his bullets will hit the head. So even if he isn't consistent on his first shot, he's able to aim so quickly and control his spray that he's able to make up for some of the downsides. This is also the aiming style that I've noticed out of Zekken and Flor. Now both of them are also really good aimers, like raw aimers, they also play aim trainers, but because their spray control is so good, they can kind of leverage both of those with the instant flicks that they've trained up from aim trainers and also their spray control in game. They have more of a well-rounded type of aiming situation. So let's explore some of the other examples as well. Here's a clip from Benjyfishy where he's just running out heaven, insta flicks on this guy, luckily he hits a body shot, and then he's just able to reset his aim and then go for an actual burst with hit confirmation. Benjyfishy is one of those players that I've noticed when he goes for his first shot, it's almost always a tap, and then he'll follow it up with a burst after. And he's just really prioritizing his speed here. So let's take it to one of the most basic examples out there, the over aim drill that Woohoojin talked about. That really isn't an example of calm aim. What you're doing is you're insta-flicking and also intentionally over-flicking and then adjusting your crosshair with your movement. So let's unpack that for a second here. One of the downsides of insta-flicking is that you will overflick or underflick. And that's because you're flicking with high tension and high speed, so you're going to be a little bit less precise. But in a game like Valorant, you can micro adjust with your movement. And even if you aren't able to move, if your spray control is good enough, then you might still be able to get away with it. On top of that, I think that this aiming style might actually be a little bit better in this current meta because of how much utility there is. If you're really quick at flicking, then you can turn around, dodge flashes, or you can break util and kind of, deal with all the chaotic situation that this current meta has. In other words, it's actually pretty difficult to have good crosshair placement if you're getting hit with utility spam. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why very crosshair dominant players are struggling right now. Okay, so what does this really even mean? This means that players that actually don't have experience playing aim trainers can still become a really good player in this game. And arguably, even at the pro level, you still don't even have to know proper aim technique. Now, what is proper aim technique? I don't actually know the answer to that question. I think aim is a very complex topic, and I'm also not an aim coach. But I have a decent amount of time on the aim trainers. I'm Radiant Complete on the Valorant Voltaic benchmarks, so hopefully my input here isn't completely misinformed. What I've gathered is that a really well-rounded aimer has really good control over their attention. So with really fast flicks and really wide flicks, you're going to be a bit more tense so you can flick faster and, cover the distance. But with smaller adjustments like tracking or micro adjustments, you're going to be lower tension. You're going to have smoother adjustments, and you're essentially trading speed for precision. My argument is that these players are shortcutting the tension management and low tension side of things by just brute forcing and then using movement and spray control as a substitute for low tension, micro adjustments, and smooth aiming. In other words, they don't have calm aim, they just have movement and spray control. If you enjoy this type of content, then consider joining the dojo. It's my private coaching community where I have pro reviews, lectures, and VOD reviews to help you guys improve at the game. So at this point, you might be wondering, how can I actually implement this style into my gameplay? Now, I want to give you guys a kind of counterintuitive insight. If you lower your sensitivity, you can actually increase your flick speed. And I know what you might be thinking. I thought we were trying to increase our flick speed and be insta-flickers. Why am I lowering my sensitivity? Well, basically, it comes from this thing called flick confidence. I don't know if that's what it's actually called, but basically, if your flick confidence is high, then you will flick faster because you're going to throw your arm across the mouse pad. Whereas if your flick confidence is really low and you're scared about over aiming, you might flick really slow and you're trying to make sure you're really controlled. And lowering your sensitivity will increase your flick confidence because it's easier to aim on a lower sensitivity, right? It's more controlled, it's more precise. So not only do you increase your flick confidence by lowering your sensitivity, you also might be more precise just in general. And to be honest, that's kind of why I'm an advocate of playing low sensitivity for Valorant, and I also think that's why it's a trend amongst some of the pros right now, playing on extremely low sensitivities. I also do want to note that you don't have to lower your sensitivity to play this insta-flick playstyle. I think it just makes it a little bit more consistent because normally insta-flicking is inconsistent, so this can kind of mitigate some of the downsides. But if you're playing on a higher sensitivity and you do want to go for the insta-flick playstyle, what you'll see from these pro players is they have really good spray control. Some pros that kind of aim with this insta-flick playstyle on a higher sensitivity is Durka, Zekken, Something, Jing. Really anyone that has a high sensitivity tends to have really good spray control. Okay, so where does this take us? Does that mean that you shouldn't play aim trainers and aim training isn't useful and calm aim is useless because you could still become a really good player by being high tension and insta-flicking everything? Well, I don't think that's the case, and I'm trying to speak from my experience here. When I first started out as a player, I was a very flick-heavy player. Coming from CS, I would insta-flick and spray, and then after that, I was a Fortnite player, just flicking, shotguns, building all the stuff. And I was still able to reach a really high level in this game, being a Radiant player and all. But when I got aim coach and actually started training my micro adjustments and my tracking, I still got a lot of benefit. And that's because tracking and micro adjustments still serve an important role. Going back to what I said earlier, if you have good macro adjustments, you'll be able to kind of make up for any lack of crosshair placement. You don't have to rely on your spray control, especially for long range fights, because spraying at long range is going to be a lot harder. And on top of that, if you train tracking, your movement reading is better. So when you're facing an opponent that's AD spamming in front of you, you might have an easier time of actually understanding where to put your crosshair to actually kill this opponent. Now, if you're good at spraying, you still might be able to just spray the guy, hit a couple body shots, slow him down, or just get a bullet in the face. But again, if they're too far away, that could prove to be difficult. And adding to that, I think that if you do hard bots, you'll be able to be actually more consistent if you play in a smoother, more calm-oriented way that is lower tension. And to kind of prove my point here, I'm going to show a clip of this guy getting 30 hard bots with Sheriff only. You'll notice he actually isn't insta-flicking and shooting. His flicks are a lot more slow and dragged, and it doesn't really look like a proper flick. And I would argue that this is true. It's not actually really a fast flick. It's more of a smooth flick that prioritizes a soft landing. So with this type of flick, you might start off with slightly higher tension and then slowly taper off towards the end. So basically accelerating at the start, decelerating at the end. And this is where I think players can take it to the next level. You're able to kind of blend your aiming with fast flicks, but also know how to aim with low tension, with smooth micro adjustments, and stable tracking and movement reading, then that's where I think you can gain an edge over other players in terms of actually pure raw aim. The reason why it's not required at the pro level even is because you can shortcut some of that stuff with spray control and movement. And that's also why raw aim isn't the most important thing to train in a game like Valorant. Raw aim really might only make up like 20% of your mechanics, and the other 80% is more stuff like crosshair placement, spray control, the whole everything else, pre-aiming, peeking. So where do you go from here? Well, my recommendation is instead of blindly following trends that you see on YouTube talking about calm aim, or even this video talking about insta-flicking, you should experiment with both. If you're struggling with consistency, And you might want to slow it down a little bit, train your micro adjustments and tracking so that you can have smoother aim and also understand how targets are moving on your screen. But if you're losing duels because your crosshair placement is off or you're too slow, then it might be better to train high tension INSTA-Flicks. And I do want to quickly mention that Demon 1 actually did train his INSTA-Flicks, at least based on the video he released. You'll see in the range he's just INSTA-Flicking from bottom up, so starting at the waist and then flicking up, or going from the side and aiming at horizontal level. And I think this is worth to train because it will help you build up that intuition. So something to try out if you are willing. You might want to lower your sensitivity and maybe even try a control pad and see if this INSTA-Flick style works for you. An alternative is to actually train your spray control, which for some reason everyone thinks is a sin in this game. I think spraying is really good and it's really overpowered, but it seems to be completely underrated for some reason. Or if you're into aim trainers, you can try to address this by training your high tension to low tension, which is something like a target switching scenario. And I do think that target switching scenarios are really good for a game like Valorant. And if you made it this far into the video, I have a little gift for you guys. If you join the Discord, there will be a document explaining how I think you should train these skills. So let me throw this back to you guys. Do you guys think calm aim is overrated? And are you guys going to try any of these things mentioned in the video? Other than that, if you're interested in coaching, check out the description for more details.